I had to change my background.
You got a crowd behind you.
What is that? Memories of a Cooper River Bridge run?
You get the prize today, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, thank you.
This has got canceled. This is for Councilmember Seeking, so it doesn't feel too blue.
Yes. I thought that's what that looked like to me.
That's your race, Councilmember Seeking.
Peter, here you go. Hang on a sec. I can join you. There you go.
There you go. I've got you. I got a picture of you somewhere directing it from last year. So, but I thought this was to capture the whole lesson. So.
It takes me a while before you see crowds like that again.
Are we going to sing happy birthday to Councilmember Appel? I think
please.
I think he turned 21 today. I'm not sure.
Yes, we've told him happy birthday, but
yeah. Well, he didn't. I called him and he didn't call me back. I threatened him. He didn't call me back. I was just saying happy birthday to him. So.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
If we did it for
my flat singing voice.
If we did it for Councilmember Griffin, I feel like we have to embarrass Councilmember Appel as well.
Oh man,
absolutely.
Hasn't the public endured enough over the last 2 months?
Oh boy.
Well, I really appreciate it.
Sure. No.
Well, dead silence around here. Something that happened, or I got one thing to say. We got to get back to normal. I spent my whole weekend painting porch furniture.
Oh, that's bad.
Yes.
What color? What color did you paint it?
What in the world is behind you, Councilmember Griffin?
we can't see him yet.
That's DRG.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. That's DRG.
I promised Shannon Scaff that I'd put that as my background for a few minutes. Me as an old man.
Ooh.
I can't believe you actually did it. I can't believe you actually did it.
Okay, I'm late.
Now I don't even have to be in the meeting.
We can make some really bad comments about that, but we will refrain.
Okay, sorry, I'm late. I missed that. What was that?
Mayor, the first order of business is singing happy birthday to Councilmember Appel.
Oh, really?
Yes, today's his birthday.
He's old enough to have a birthday? Yeah.
That's what we just asked.
He's old enough to not want anymore.
All right. So, sorry I was a minute late. Everybody good to go?
Yeah.
Councilmember Seekings, what you got there? Gibbs?
Yes, sir. Got the Gibbs. They gave out the Schulbred Award from the Gibbs today. So in honor of the Schulbred Award winner, who is Susan Smythe, you might want to drop her a note. I thought I put the Gibbs back there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Councilmember Griffin, what we got going on there?
That's what I would look like in about 50 years.
Which most of us will never see.
Love that. Love
Well,
that.
speak for yourself.
I'm speaking for myself. Please,
All
God,
right.
not 50.
Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Yes. Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin.
I'm here.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory,
Here.
Councilmember Waring,
Here.
Councilmember Seeking, Councilmember Shade,
Present.
Councilmember Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Appel,
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson,
Here.
Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here. And just a little while ago, I was with Councilmember Mitchell because it was in his district to have the ribbon cutting on a beautiful quadruplex, if you will, 4 units of affordable housing for up to 60% AMI. And they're really lovely units, if I may say. Good job done by our Department of Housing, Community Development, and all our partners on this, including Palmetto Action Agency and the LDC and the builder, Borden builders. They all did a beautiful job. Y'all have to stop by there, 105 Hanover Street.
Right.
So with
You
that,
looked great, Mayor. I was waiting for the virtual tour. I'm sorry that you couldn't take the camera inside.
oh yeah, I thought they did that. So, Councilmember Mitchell, could I call upon you here on the spot to open us with a prayer?
Oh, yes. Okay. Take time to be holy. Speak out with thy Lord. Abide in him always and feed on his word. Fathers, we come here today. We ask you to be with us and look at all the people who are dying and their families. Give them strength that they can keep on keeping on in this time of trials that we are going through. And we know in your own time, all this would be lifted. We just have to be obedient to your will. We ask you to bless our mayor, bless all my colleagues on city council, and let us all work together in harmony and peace. Make Charleston one of the best places to live. And sometimes we have to make some decisions that's not pleasing to everyone, but the decision that we are making to make sure that everyone is safe in their place and their living. Amen.
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 Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And so I mentioned all that. I don't know if Ms. Johnson, Gianna's on the line, but a special shout out to her for all the efforts on this Hanover Street. They came in early, on budget, ahead of time, and they really look beautiful. Gianna, are you out there?
Yes, sir. I am out here, and thank you, and thanks to you and City Council for your support of 105 Hanover and other affordable housing developments.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we're going to move right along to update on our city's response to COVID-19. And I'm going to call on our emergency director, Shannon Scaff. Shannon.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thanks for the opportunity to give you a brief tonight. All objectives remain the same. There are now 1,496,509 U.S. COVID cases with 90,312 deaths as of 4/15 today. South Carolina, according to DHEC, as of 4/15 Monday, May 18th in South Carolina, there were 8,942 cases and 391 confirmed deaths contributed to COVID-19. The statewide case fatality rate remains at 4.4%. And to date, nursing homes continue to be a significant factor in overall cases and fatalities, with nearly 14% of known cases and 1 in 3 deaths across the state being attributed to long-term care facilities. The latest DHEC report states Charleston County had a total of 509 cases and 11 confirmed deaths, with at least 210 of those cases having occurred within the city of Charleston. For Berkeley County, there are currently 203 reported cases and 15 confirmed deaths attributed to COVID-19. Case fatality rates for the Low Country, which include both Charleston and Berkeley counties, currently stand at approximately 3.9%. Testing for COVID-19 continues to be a crucial part of reopening businesses and activities across the state and is on track with testing 2% of the state population per month. Overall, positivity rates for testing across the state continue to decrease and currently stand at an average rate of 3%, indicating more widespread testing is occurring. Charleston County's mobile testing effort, partnered with Federal Health, continues to be successful, having tested 686 residents within the city of Charleston alone and 2,088 countywide. 4 testing dates remain this week at various locations in the county and continue to accept walk-ins. However, due to the high volume of participation, residents are strongly encouraged to register for pre-screening at federcovid19screening.org or by calling 1-800-365-7410, 1-800-365-7410. In terms of keeping order in the city, all waste collection routes remain caught up, and public service continues to run their routinely scheduled routes. In the last 48 hours, Charleston Police Department has responded to 3 calls for large gatherings of crowds, with overall daily call volume remaining lower than average. City Fire, the Charleston Fire Department responded to 38 calls for medical assistance in the last 48 hours, with motor vehicle accidents trending lower than normal. Overall medical call volume for all other types remain within average ranges. There are currently no issues with police or fire lacking PPE during calls for service, with 1,321 employees accounted for in 14 of 15 departments reporting on Thursday, May 14th. There were 40% in office and in the work environment, 11% working from home, 36% in the field, and 13% on some type of leave. As of 4:30 today, calls for the Citizen Services Desk reached 250 total calls for the day. Common topics of concern included questions about when Hazel Parker Dog Park will reopen, as well as missed garbage collections and requests for new garbage bins. The Charleston Area Convention and Visitors Bureau currently reports 44 hotels open in the city of Charleston and an additional 63 open hotels in the surrounding Charleston area. I want to just move very briefly to hurricanes. Obviously, we had a shot across our bow this weekend with Tropical Storm Arthur, which serves as a stark reminder to all of us that we're very close to the beginning of hurricane season. I believe this is either year 5 or 6 in a row that we've seen a named storm in advance of the official start of hurricane season. I want to tell you that we are off to the races in terms of preparations. The Hurricane Task Force is doing great work. They're working everything from debris management to sandbagging operations to ensuring the 29 staff members who are specially trained in swift water and flood rescue are ready to go with all of their equipment. Shelter operations. I mean, there's a multitude of tasks that are happening right now in support of hurricane season. So I just wanted to pass that along to you. And while I've got you, I wanted to pass the floor, if I may, to Chief Reynolds to talk a bit about observations this past weekend regarding restaurants and bars. Chief, are you out there?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Shannon. So we have a task force that we've talked about, I think, last week. Big shout out to the fire marshals, the CFD. Mike Jalajala has been the lead. He and his team have been out in force and visiting establishments with livability, Dan Riccio and his team, and with the police department. And we've been in close communication with the CVB and John Keener in particular, who's been the kind of the voice of the Restaurant and Hospitality Administration Association. And he's been extremely helpful, very insightful. And our initial approach, if you will, is to educate, to find the right balance, to help educate businesses. We've done a lot with the CVB in terms of emails and surveys, and really the idea is that we work together with our business community to try to help them succeed in opening back up, and emphasizing that we do it responsibly and safely and in compliance with the guidelines. So there's been a lot of, my initial assessment would be a lot of success. I personally went out, and I know a lot of the council members did as well, on King Street and different businesses this weekend, to patronize, but also kind of see firsthand. Our officers have visited and our executives, many of the businesses, and the feedback has been very positive. A lot of, at great expense, great sacrifice, a lot of the businesses have really removed tables, put in place safe practices, sanitation, gloves, masks, separating people in lines, all kinds of virtual, online, electronic menus, a whole variety of different practices, which I thought were really positive. There are a few, which we predicted, businesses that have not been compliant. And it's more challenging with the bars than the restaurants. And I've learned a lot about the difference between the two in terms of organizations and consistency. So overall, I would describe it as very positive. Tracy Key's got a couple metrics. Mike Jalajala was kind enough to kind of create some charts and to track some of what we've been doing. But I would describe this as the beginning, as an iterative process. I will tell you that there are businesses that have gone through so much and sacrificed so much to do this so well, that even the businesses are giving us some pressure to hold those few accountable that are not behaving well, because they want to improve consumer confidence. They want to do it right. They want people to feel safe and feel confident to come out and eat in their establishments. And so it's pretty universal, the messaging that I'm receiving, and that we've been giving out and that we'll continue to give out, that those businesses that choose not to be responsible, to not adhere to those things, as we discussed last week, I think there'll be a lot of positive peer pressure among the restaurants, among their peers, on social media. We are prepared through occupancy surveys and personal visits with the fire marshals, police, and livability, if we need to take some steps. But so far, I think we're heading in a good direction, very positive. And I guess Tracy, I think, had a couple of slides she was going to show us.
Bear with me, I'm pulling up my slides now.
Okay. So Tracy, are you getting ready to do the overall, this comprehensive opening of all city offices?
If you're ready for me to, then yes.
I think I was gonna just allow council if they had any questions for either Shannon or Chief Reynolds before we moved on to your presentation, if that's
Absolutely.
okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so they might not have any, but council, I see Councilmember Saccharin, then Shade. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to commend our police chief and Dan and Livability and everyone that was out this weekend doing what they were doing and doing spot checks. I heard directly from several restaurant owners yesterday who called and just gave me a lowdown, and essentially echoes what police chief said. We've got 90% of our folks really doing a great job, and there are a few examples where folks aren't doing it. So I hope the peer pressure works, and I know some of them are probably listening in on the call. We really encourage you to get out there and make sure these folks are following the rules, because the ones that are following the rules and doing what they should be doing are, doing it at a lower capacity. And they're doing it sometimes with increased costs on their end with payroll and staffing and everything else. So, these guys are sacrificing. So really, really want you all to make sure that you can help us, get the folks that aren't doing it in line. And, I don't think, and I'm not going to speak for other council members, but I do want to say there's concern if this doesn't happen. So I just wanted to commend everyone for going out this weekend, and the business owners that did contact me. Thanks for the feedback, and keep it coming.
Great, thank you. Councilmember.
If I could just add, we did the press conference on Friday, and I had an occasion to talk to many of the business owners. And there's I don't want to say, I'll call it a healthy fear, when they saw the fire marshals. I think in some points they were in groups of 4. At least it was described that way, going to different businesses, along with livability and the police. And I think the message was received, and I think it was significant and it was meaningful. We have a lot of work to do. I describe this just as the very beginning of what I think is going to be a grind. It's been a lot of work to get to this point, to get things closed down. It's going to take a lot of work to get back opened up in a responsible way. But I'm sorry, that's
That's fine. No, I agree, Chief. Thank you. A great team of livability police and fire marshal's office on this effort. Councilmember Shade and then Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to go back to what Shannon has stated earlier about hurricane season. And several weeks ago, I think it was Councilmember Pale made a comment or a question concerning evacuation and places for people to go in the event of a hurricane. I know that we have opened up a great many of our businesses and other activities around the city and throughout the state. However, in the event of an evacuation, how do we plan to accommodate our citizens when we're still practicing social distancing? Have y'all had those discussions, and how do we interlay with them?
Yes, sir. That's a very good question, and one that we've been working alongside the county and the Red Cross, DSS, and others to get to the bottom of. Right now, there are 6 pre-landfall Cat 3 or below shelters in Charleston County. We're looking, and when I say we, I'm talking about the big 3 municipalities, the county of Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester County, looking at congregate and non-congregate shelters as options. Again, the 6 pre-landfall Cat 3 or below would be kind of the standard that you've seen for many years in Charleston County. This is after an engineering study was done to verify the validity of those, the usability of those shelters before a hurricane. But they're looking at some different options now in terms of non-congregate. So looking at dorms, looking at hotels, and the Red Cross is leading the charge on that. So we're having about 1 meeting a week with all of our partners on this. And it's obviously it's a hot topic right now that we're really working hard to get to the bottom of. So I'll look forward to being able to give you a little more detail on it, but just know that there are a number of different entities in local, county, and state government who are all over this to ensure that we keep that social distancing as job one.
Can I just add a follow-up question to that? And I appreciate what you have reported to us. I think it's going to be critical. As you said earlier, we had a named tropical storm before the beginning of hurricane season officially begins. And if the governor issues an evacuation order, I am presuming that his staff and the folks working on his response team have taken that into consideration and would expect that we're down here having communication and contact with the governor's office.
Yes, sir. I think, yes, sir. That's going to be paramount. We'll be communicating through the county, and then, the mayor will have his channels as well. I'll be working with Jason Patno and Ben Almquist, my counterparts at the county, to get with the emergency support functions in Columbia to ensure we get the resources that we need. But yes, as far as evacuations go and when they're ordered, as I've said the last several weeks now, I mean, the city is going to support the decision to evacuate, and the lead danger here is the water, and so we're going to want everybody out of the way of water.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about those issues, and I'm glad that Shannon's on top of it. And but for us to think that that's not going to happen is we're living in la-la land. Our prior experiences, we know we're going to have a storm which is going to warrant some type of evacuation order. And if this COVID-19 is still hovering over us, like I think it will be, those are real concerns that we need to be preparing for. And I just appreciate what Shannon's doing, and it sounds like we're staying on top of it, but we probably just need to have updates from some more regular basis as the season gets more upon us. Thank you, Shannon.
Yes, sir.
It's a work on progress, but let me say this. I'm knocking on wood, crossing fingers and toes and saying prayers that we get a pass this year. I'm not counting on it, not relying on it. We're going to be ready, but let's hope for the best. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. I appreciate the follow-up with Shannon over the hurricane season, because obviously that is something on the top of everyone's mind. Just on an announcement note of that, the American Flood Coalition, that a few of us are members, and we represent Charleston in that group of coastal researchers and evaluators and policy developers. They're coming out with a directive. I think it's 6 different, instructions or updates on how to go through the hurricane season in addition to COVID. So they think they have a very helpful resource to communities like ours. So I'm sure you'll get your own copy, Mayor, and we'll be able to put that on Shannon's plate as a reference. I want to go back to following up on the report on the restaurant owners' compliance. I agree that, it does seem anecdotally that the vast majority of establishment owners, if they're open, which most of them seem to be out here on James Island, at least in some fashion, and they're all trying to do their best in cooperating and, living into beyond the guidelines that are posted by the state in one region and now us. And I see that you've given us an amended agenda tonight, not to vote on any sort of more regulatory ordinance that would require any sort of guideline adherence as a law. So I agree with that, as long as, we're seeing progress. I was wondering though, for the 5-10% that are probably never going to be as cooperative and as safe practicing as we would like them to, do we have the ability, or is it I know that, back in the day, people would just sort of post information about places that are not trustworthy. And I know we do that for public health. We're required to, DHEC's required to post notices if restaurants are under some sort of public health watch. So I think that that's something we should at least be thinking about, that if we have just, obstructionists who are not cooperating out of their own misplaced values, that we should make it known to people so that they don't even try to be customers, and, and make that sort of a stick that we could use without having an enforceable regulation, if that's what we're choosing. Thank you.
If I could.
Chief Reynolds, yes.
If I could speak to that briefly. So each time we have stepped it down and now we're stepping it back up, we are trying to have balance, and we're trying to do collaborative and partners, of course, all the things we talked about. However, to your point, one of the low-level initial approaches, and some of that involves legal advice, I think what you're recommending, which I think is a good idea, and we can explore that also. But we have learned, and I think it was taught by council last week a little bit, and I'll reiterate, that there's a network among the industry. And so we have been having constant contact with John Keener and others. And he actually texted me first thing in the morning, Saturday, Sunday morning, said, "Hey, Chief, is there anything that we can do to help you? Are there some people that we need to reach out and contact?" And we had a conference call, not only on Friday, but again on Sunday at 4 o'clock yesterday with our whole team, John Keener and others. And we do have a handful that we've identified. Right. And they have been contacted. And just like the one restaurant that was discussed last week that shut down, that was kind of, I'll say shamed, I'll use that word. Mm-hmm. Some of these other organizations are being contacted by their peers. And I've been contacted personally and said, hey, if they're not willing, and these are other restaurant owners, right, who are saying, listen, we'll apply the pressure. We'll do things on social media. And if it comes down to it, we would encourage some level of enforcement, and we have some tools as well And so your point is a good one. And I just want to say that that is a consideration. It's already been a part of our process from the beginning. And I think that we're going to have to continue on that. It's a continuum that there's those few that don't want to do things safely and don't really care. We have some steps to and measured responses to that.
That's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, just got a couple of points. Number one, we've had restaurants open a couple weeks now. We had restaurants open up outside and now inside. And I think that if you ask any restaurateur in Charleston, they're going to tell you that they're losing money every single day, even being open at a limited amount of capacity. A lot of them have had to change their business model to even be able to have people come in to eat. Restaurants that were maybe more predominantly bars have transitioned into a more of a food atmosphere. And we know that obviously it's a lot harder to make money that way. So we have to continue to work with these partners of ours in the food and beverage industry because they're struggling, even being open. If any one of us ran a business and we could only open up at 50% capacity, nobody has those kind of margins that they're still going to be able to make a profit. So anything we can do to help these guys is very, very important. This weekend is going to be Memorial Day weekend, and we're going to see an influx of people come into town because we've made it known that we're open for business, even at a limited capacity. What kind of measures are we putting in place to protect areas such as King Street that you're going to have a lot of people walking around who may not necessarily be able to even get inside a lot of places because we've limited the number of capacity? What kind of measures are we going to take to make sure that people don't congregate on the streets as they wait for a table in certain areas? That would be my first question. Have we discussed that internally?
Well, we recommend the 6-foot spacing even outside of an establishment if folks are waiting to get in. I mean, like everything, like all of these guidelines, we'll have that same team we've referred to already to try to help enforce that.
Okay.
I would say just personal observation and talking to some of the businesses, not all of them have this opportunity, but one of the business, I won't name the restaurant, we actually ate outside in a tent. One of the expanded areas that the council has approved, that the mayor approved, and they could not be more thankful for that. It kind of fixes some of the capacity issues that you just described. And so the feedback from some of those expansions and some of those opportunities firsthand was very, very positive. And we, as the police department, at least in answering that question, that's something that we deal with all the time, and it's a struggle. But we'll be out there in force, paying attention to those things as well.
We definitely don't want King Street to turn into this area behind Councilmember Shahid's and his background. And so anything we can do to keep people that may not be residents but visitors, because I've talked to many people that are in town that don't necessarily live here, who are working from home, who just got in their car and drove down here because their state doesn't have anything open and we do. Now we've got beaches that are open and restaurants, and you can sort of come down here and still enjoy yourself even at a limited capacity. So if we can continue to watch that situation, I think this weekend is going to be a big one. In terms of the restaurant groups, we've got a couple of different groups now. We've got Mr. Keener's group. We've also got this Food and Bev Coalition. And so if we could find a way to get all of those guys to the table and be on the same page, they are doing a good job of policing each other. However, Chief Reynolds, I'm wondering, I know specifically a couple of places that were not following the rules, and I have no problem naming them, AC's and King Street Public House. They need to step their game up and get on the same page with everybody else. But what sort of, when you had the group go in there and ask them to do a better job of following the guidelines, what was the response whenever we went in there to those establishments?
So I'm going to be careful just to reiterate how awesome our restaurant and hospitality industry is, as you said, and how I would say 95% are like just going out of their way at great expense to just get creative and keep people safe. But in those small numbers that we're talking about, that you're asking about, I would describe in a couple cases very different response from management, and it wasn't what I would hope for, and it wasn't what I would expect my people to be talked to in that way. And some people that maybe don't necessarily care about guidelines or anybody, but just, getting the largest amount of receipts they can get for that night and moving on, which is why it's so disturbing, not only to us, but also to other restaurants that have done such a great job, which is literally 95+% of the people that we saw and that we're dealing with. But in those 2 or 3, you named a couple of them, there's probably 1 or 2 others. We're monitoring, we're visiting, and I think after a nice, honest conversation, just like we saw with the business that was named last weekend, we'll see some changes. But maybe out of those 4 that maybe weren't compliant, maybe one of them doesn't change, and we'll have to find another way to deal with that particular business.
Well, I think that we've seen in the last week that when we address it publicly, their behavior is public knowledge. I think we should publicly explain how they're acting. And so I have no problem saying that I have heard from several people that a couple of businesses, I named them, are not doing a good job of social distancing, and they are putting the entire restaurant community at risk by being very, very selfish. And so I would ask that those establishments, if they're on this call or if they hear this message, please step up, look at all of the restaurants around town that are sacrificing so much just to be open, and please follow suit, because there's no way that we're ever going to get normal again if we do not follow these procedures right now. Everybody is hurting. Our restaurant community is hurting greatly, and our tourism community, which hasn't even gotten back on their feet yet, they're hopefully going to be next. But our hospitality and tourism industry are so vital to this city. I just would hate that 1 or 2 bad actors would spoil it for everybody. So I hope that they'll heed our warning and our message, because we're not playing around. And I just want to thank you, Chief, for everybody. I was out on King Street this weekend. So was Councilmember Seekings. We went to a couple of places together to check them out, and we were very impressed with how great these restaurants and these particularly formerly bars that are now acting as restaurants, serving a lot more food, just trying to think outside the box. And that's the only way we're going to do it, is if we can get through it together. So I appreciate all your efforts, and I hope we can move forward together on this.
Great. Thank you. Well said. So next, I'd like to move on to Tracy McKee, who's going to give us an update on our kind of overall framework for opening up our city offices, facilities, and services, most of which have all, as you know, been operating our services, but we haven't been engaged with direct person-to-person contact in our buildings. And so, Tracy, I'm going to turn it now over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks everyone for giving me a few minutes just to talk about this framework that we've developed to safely and thoughtfully open up city offices and facilities. And when I say we, it has definitely been a collaborative effort with the mayor's office and all the departments. Many people have been involved in putting this plan together. So what we've come up with is a 4-phase approach. And each phase is really meant to be just a gradual step towards returning to what we think will be a new normal. And we've kind of used our phase 4 as what we think will be new normal until we can return to pre-COVID operations, which could likely be when we have a vaccine. So I know this is really hard for everybody because everyone loves a date, right? Everyone loves a deadline. But really the guidance that we're using to go into a new phase is not going to be driven necessarily by the calendar, but we're going to use data, and we're going to use indicators that we've come up with to help really tell us when we think it's a good idea to move into that next phase. And kind of our plan going forward, we'll have an internal task force, and this task force has been meeting very, very regularly over the last, at least the last 3 weeks. But we'll continue to meet at least regularly, look at the data, and make a recommendation to the mayor on what we think when we think we're ready to move into that next phase. So I talked a little bit about data last week, so it should be no surprise. We've worked with the folks at MUSC to come up with those indicators or those metrics that we're going to use for our phased approach to opening the city. And like I mentioned last week, we're all learning this together. The medical community continues to learn more about COVID-19. And there's also programs that could be put into play that help with early detection of new cases. So as all these things change, our indicators might evolve as well. So what we've come up with, this framework, is really, we consider it to be a living document. As we learn, it will evolve. So why did we come up with this? We thought it was really important to have a framework so that we have alignment across the whole organization to make sure that departments are increasing their service lines, if you will, in a very compatible way, so that one department wasn't acting or operating wildly different than another department. It also will give confidence to staff in being able to come to work and know what the expectations are, as well as the public know how they can do business with us safely. Not something that we really want to talk about, and we hope we don't have to do this, but what this framework also does is if we decide we need to take a step backwards for some reason, everyone's going to know what those expectations are because we've spent the time really thinking about what that looks like. So before I kind of give you the very general view of our opening matrix, I just wanted to, there's a couple of key points that really are inherent in all phases, that we're going to adhere to all the current social distancing protocols. So that's, we don't know what those are going to be as time goes by, but that is one rule that we have for all phases, as well as adhering to sanitation practices wherever that's applicable, as it is for most everything that we do, right? Continue to encourage and facilitate telework. The mayor mentioned that so many of our services have been able to fully function and function well and efficiently with a good bit of our employees telecommuting. So we feel like this is important to keep alive. Make sure that we have policies in place so that employees don't come to work when they're sick. They don't feel like they have to come into the office. So HR has done a wonderful job with that. And the whole team has been really looking across the country and to CDC and any other experts out there to get best practice guidance on how they should safely open their operations. So this is a very, very general view of our matrix. The live matrix is very, very long and complicated because we did try to ensure that it included everyone and we thought of everyone. But across the top, you'll see the phases laid out. And basically all this means is we're going from a more restricted environment to a less restricted environment as we move to phase 4. And this is meant to be very, very slow, liberal, thoughtful, and safe. General guidelines, we're looking for our indicators to remain green or stable for 14 to 21 days, give ourselves some wiggle room if we feel like things are a little too much on the edge. But those are kind of the guidelines that we'd like to see for considering moving into a new phase. But we thought something more like 21 to 30 days when we start thinking about moving into phase 4 or whatever we think that new normal would be. And on the left-hand side, these are just the general categories that we've put together for kind of all the city operations. So we've grouped them into office facilities, tourism, parks and rec, cultural facilities and programs, and then our enforcement and general services. Like I said, there's a much more detailed matrix that I will share with you all through a web link later for your viewing pleasure. Might put you to sleep tonight. So where are we? We are currently in phase 1. And why are we here? So beginning on April 28th, we were already meeting that primary indicator of less than 1% of our 5-day trend in new cases. So looking at April 28th as that start date puts us at phase 1 beginning on May the 12th, okay? So what that means, we could be considering phase 2 as early as May 26th. And I say as early as because that's, we need to continue to look at our metrics. And we also have that 14 to 21 day window that gives us a little buffer in case we have some concerns of moving into the next phase. So again, we just need to continue to watch the data. Right now, I thought this was really interesting, so I want to just take a moment to share it with you all. And I know you all have seen this visually, and I don't know if you all have been to the dashboard, but I mean, honestly, our metrics have really been very stable and have stayed green, which is great. I guess it was about mid-April, those 2 weeks from mid-April to early May, we saw a really big increase in mobility. And I think everybody would agree that we all kind of felt it. More people were out and doing some of their normal, regular type things. That was a really big jump. I was honestly a little bit nervous seeing that. But I will say over the last week, that seems to have stabilized a little bit. And we seem to be kind of stabilized and tracking more along the lines of 50% of where we were before COVID. So we're still kind of at that 50% mark. So I think that's just something to kind of keep our eyes on. It's been 3 weeks now. And again, mobility is not necessarily a bad thing as long as people are adhering to good social distancing practices and washing their hands frequently. So this may not be necessarily a bad thing, but it is something, it does increase our overall risk for spreading COVID. So the chief mentioned this earlier, and I just want to give a big shout out to this whole team, really, I think led by the Fire Marshal's office and Mike Gelazada, but PD, Fire Marshal, and Livability, they have really teamed up and are going out and talking to restaurant and bar owners. And the cool thing is they've developed this form that each team has on a smartphone, and as they go in and kind of do some observational things, they're actually collecting data about what they're seeing. So you can see, just like the chief indicated, most businesses, most bars and restaurants are actually doing a really good job. There's only a few that did not have any protocols in place for tracking and counting the occupancy loads. And you can see observe social distancing practices. The only one that seems off was staff wearing face covering or masks. So all of the other indicators were really solid. This isn't an actual true indicator that we've built metrics around. However, it is something that we are going to use to inform decision making. So one last slide here. This is something that keeps coming up. When do we know that we need to take a step backwards? Because nobody's ever had to do this before. So there's been a lot of talk about that. So there's some obvious things here, right? So statewide orders, city ordinances, and some other, looking at our indicators if they change and go red or yellow. Those are very much, lagging indicators like Dr. Cole had talked about even last week. So, one of the things that we also have been tracking, right, is we know when an employee tests positive for COVID. So that's obviously one that that we want to keep a close eye on, and that might be something that might, kind of raise our eyebrows if we start to see some employees testing positive, because we've been very, very fortunate so far and not had many employees test positive. So with that, there is a much more detailed matrix that I can share with you via a web link after this presentation tonight or after tonight's meeting. But I'm happy to take any questions that anybody might have.
Great. Any questions for Ms. Tracy? Councilmember Shea.
Mayor, I mentioned this, I think, a couple days ago, one of our council meetings, and I was watching and going over the slides that Tracy had for us. I didn't see anything up there about council meetings getting back to some kind of normalcy. And I had mentioned, Mayor, the success that the Public Safety Committee had with its person interviews of candidates. And I think that could serve as a good model, even if we did what the race did on this past weekend, we do it without fans in the stadium. But I think that it may be getting to that point in time in which we're meeting as a group instead of on a virtual platform, even if we don't have folks in attendance for our regular meetings, not the emergency meetings that we're having like this one. But I think that we should be considering phasing in at the very least council meeting in person.
Well, I'm not sure where on the grid public meetings get back to normal, but my guess is that it was in phase 4. Is that correct, Tracy?
That's correct. We've talked a lot about public meetings and how we could do those, and we may try to look at some options for how we could do those in person, some sort of hybrid in phase 3, but there are some logistical complications and IT needs that need to be in place, which we don't have available now to us. So that adds a little of difficulty to making that happen in a productive and safe manner.
Well, I would just urge that we start looking towards that on a more expeditious manner. I mean, this is all good that we're meeting in this capacity, but I think at some point in time, as a public body, we should be meeting in person. I think that's important for the public to observe us as we're meeting. And I think we could be more productive as well. Not that we have to have folks there, but whatever technology we need to do, we need to be pushing towards that goal sooner than later. And I'm not sure if anybody else has that same kind of feeling I do on council, but I think you're getting to that point.
Well,
I agree.
Council member,
I agree.
Any other comments or questions for Ms. Tracy? Councilmember Seeking.
Just very briefly, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Tracy. Super interesting, and I know you're working hard on it. I'm really interested in the metrics side of it. And as we go forward, what metrics you're actually looking at to make some of these decisions. I mean, we hear a lot about testing. Are the metrics and the numbers we're looking at a ratio of number of tests given to positive tests coming back? Is it the number of hospital beds available being used? I mean, just knowing what those metrics are, I think would be very helpful to us going forward.
Sure, I didn't want to overwhelm everyone.
I get it. Thank you, by the way, for that. But I just think as we go forward, when people ask what the metrics look like, and I think one of the good indicator as testing goes up is the ratio of tests given to positive tests received, right? I mean, that's, to me, the biggest indicator.
It absolutely is one of the indicators. I'm sorry, Councilmember Appel, I'm going to mute you really quick, getting some feedback, but I see your hand up. Yeah, so just really quickly, so in the link that I'm going to send out to everybody after tonight's meeting, it'll have all of those indicators and how they're identified as being green, yellow, and red. But at a high level, definitely that testing, the testing results, the PCR testing results is definitely one of those indicators. as well as, kind of just like very similarly to what we've seen at the MUSC website. So I've been we are very much in link with what MUSC is using as well. But we've also included some things like our own PPE for our employees, as well as, kind of the social mobility like I showed, but most everything is really in lockstep with MUSC's.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Councilmember Appel, did you have your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment about metrics. I think that we're exiting the stage of this business is open, this business is closed, that whole deal. I think that sort of the floodgates are sort of open. And I think a lot of that was not our decision, but it's the reality of where things are today. I think we need to start conceptually getting our head around the fact that in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, it's probably likely that we're going to see numbers increase. We're probably going to see that curve move. And that's just a product of more testing, which is great. We need to be doing a whole lot more testing all over the country. And also the fact that people are getting out and doing stuff. Now, I think we need to start thinking about what we do when we see those numbers start to change. I personally don't believe just the numbers, just the curve tell the whole story. We can have a curve that goes up. We can have more confirmed tests without the sky falling, without the need to slam back, closures of businesses, because doing so, I think will really kill a lot of businesses. There's a difference between numbers not looking good, a graph not looking good, and MUSC and Roper Hospital being overrun, military trucks in the streets, things of that nature. So and I'm not here to poo-poo metrics, data, it's all super important. I just think that as we move into this next phase, we ought to start kind of psychologically preparing ourselves for what may very well come to pass. And I hope this never comes to pass and maybe the virus goes away on its own this summer. But I think that you talk to a lot of folks and they say that, it's inevitable that under the current strategy that we're under really as a country, not as just a city, this is the policy that we're taking as a country. It's sort of a foregone conclusion that this is going to happen, whether it's this summer, whether it's this fall. And I think that we need to, obviously this took everybody by surprise in January, February, March of this year. We know a whole lot more now. We need to be brave. We need to stand up strong and put our chest out and be able to lead in the face of what at first blush may be scary numbers, but may belie sort of the reality on the ground. So just a little comment. Thanks.
All right, I appreciate that. I think when you dig in to what Tracy will send you later this evening, it's the most comprehensive set of parameters and plans that I've seen of any organization, locally at least, opening up. And it considers many of those things that you mentioned, and more parameters can be added as they're thoughtfully recommended. We built this based upon what the medical university, our healthcare professionals were recommending. But it's not a situation where if one number jumps up, then you just shut everything back down. There's multiple things you're looking at the same time. And if you see one pop up, then you watch it. If you see 2 or 3 or 4 of them jump up all at the same time, then you really say, well, wait a second. But the beauty of it, the way Tracy and Mark and our staff has devised this, it's able to dial back without going all the way back to 0. Okay. And it's very methodical that way. And I can't thank them enough for the time and the thoughtfulness and the expertise that they put into this. But dig into it later this evening, over the next couple of days. You got other recommendations, please make them to us. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All of that I agree with. I think Tracy's done a wonderful job with the progression with her matrix on this. I agree with all of you all on this. I'm gonna go back to something minor with, I won't say minor, but some Councilman Shahid said about public meetings. I'm wondering, and I say this with caution because I actually think we've been very effective with these Zoom calls. And because a lot of that's towards your leadership and the staff who's been working double time and trying to make us look efficient, which is a hard job. But I'm wondering, can we have our council meetings in the salon at the Gear Yard? We can achieve proper spacing, certainly among council, and if we spaced out the seats for the public, can accomplish the same. I almost hesitate saying that because these meetings have been, and the decorum has been wonderful, as a matter of fact. So, but can we go back and open up a couple of the salons, which I don't know, can see a whole lot more than with proper spacing than our city hall chambers. But that's just food for thought. But I know one thing: when it comes to these committee meetings, I certainly hope we keep some component of these Zoom meetings going because it works very well, in my opinion. But anyway, just trying to piggyback on what Councilman Shahid said about getting back to public meetings.
Understood. Understood. I can't wait. So any other questions or comments for Tracy? So thanks again, Tracy, for the presentation, and thank Mark Wilbert. I don't know if he's online. He's been working hand in hand with Tracy on this, but really it was a team effort as usual. Team Charleston, your city staff, they're just incredible. They've all the department heads and others have contributed to this most comprehensive plan. So I'm real proud of them, and I think it keeps it's in keeping with our goal that Charleston be looked upon months from now, a year from now, as being one of the safest places in recovery and in reopening. Right. So if I may just bring up one more subject before we adjourn, unless there's any other business. Speaking of meetings, is our own meetings. I really did not intend for this week, for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to be advertised. I just didn't communicate it to Vanessa and Jennifer, but I was only really planning on us having a meeting Monday and Wednesday of this week. And then next week, Tuesday, we have our regular council meeting. And so once again, I was going to propose that we just meet twice, Tuesday and Thursday. Now, going forward through the summer, starting June 1, and I hope we get back to some in-person meeting as soon as possible. But I have the sense that we're behind a little bit on public hearings and those kinds of things. And I know technically we published at the beginning of the year, as we normally do, just one meeting per month in the summer. I would like to propose to y'all that we have first that we cease these such regular emergency meetings, but that in June and July, we continue to have 2 regular council meetings so that we could catch up a little bit on public hearings and ordinances that are now starting to come down the pike. And then hopefully August, be able to just have the one meeting as usual. And I can ask Vanessa to send out a little poll, if you will, on the other dates in June or July that would be convenient to everyone. If it's just the same to everyone, we'll keep it on a Tuesday, some Tuesday. But that's what I'd like to propose to y'all regarding meetings, be they Zoom or in person. Councilmember Shade and Councilmember Griffin, you had your hand up a minute ago.
Yes, sir. I meant to ask Tracy about this earlier.
About what?
I meant to ask Tracy about the reopening of the city services and our offices. I was approached about somebody applying for a special event permit. Is there a way to do that online, or because I've always called their office, but I know they're not there. So if somebody wanted to do, like, for example, I think somebody was wanting to do like a parade of just the cars for seniors or whatever, since a lot of Charleston County School District has not made a decision on in-person graduation. They were going to do a car ride around of West Ashley High School or whatever. How would we, is there a way online right now to apply for that special event permit?
So I'll have to look at if they have it online. I believe that they've put something in place, but I'm not sure. But special events in general, what defines a special event is something that's 50 people or more. And so right now our emergency ordinance doesn't allow for that anyway. So they're not really there's not really any special events happening and won't happen. Not really until kind of phase 3 are we thinking about like where that would be. We'd kind of look at what's coming down from the state about allowing special events in DHEC. So
I think we could accept an application for something in the future.
absolutely, absolutely. So I do think that they have it, but I would have to.
If you don't mind just emailing me some details on that, I appreciate it.
I'd be happy to, absolutely.
That'd be great. Councilmember Shea, did I see your hand up a minute ago?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to support what you said about the meetings, Mayor. There's a lot of heads bobbing up and down in approval. I think that's the consensus of the rest of my colleagues, but I agree with you. If we could meet just twice this week, would be fine with me, since we're going into the Memorial Day weekend and avoid Friday.
Right.
And then also, I think starting in June, twice a month is suitable for me as well. I would encourage us to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, and if we needed to call a special meeting, of course we always could. But I think that would allow us to play catch up and take care of all our business unless something unforeseen came up. All right, anything else for the good of the order? If not, we will see y'all on Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Well,
Mr. Mayor?
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
Okay.
Go on, Councilmember.
Well, I just want to let people know that I don't know if you have heard, and I think, Mr. Mayor, you probably know of him. Our first council member, African-American council member, St. Julian Devine, his son, Kenneth Devine, died in Maryland on Saturday. So I think they'll be bringing him down here to Feeling sometime this week, and he'll be buried at Fort Jackson. But I just want to put that out to you, because some of you all might know of him. You know, and we grew up together, but that's St. Julian Devine's son, who was the first African-American council member for the city of Charleston. That's his son, one of his sons.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. I had not heard that. Thank you.
We'll keep him in our prayers.
Any other announcement?
And Mayor, I just wanted you to mention that we amended this agenda.
Yes, we amended the agenda just to show for the record the deferred amendment. We're just, so to speak, keeping it alive in case we needed to come back to it.
Yes.
Great. All right. Any further business? We'll see y'all on Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy birthday.